More than 16,000 state workers are on the verge of going on strike. Negotiations have just broken off and picket signs are set to go up at midnight. Mark Hass is following this story. He's in Salem right now. Mark, what happens now?
Julie, what happens now is at 12:01 tomorrow morning, the State Employees Union, the Oregon Public Employees Union, will go on strike. Given the events today, that is not surprising. Both sides were far apart on key issues, and state employees today vented their frustration in a show of solidarity.
We're sitting there doing the best we can to get you the best package we can, and they're not moving. Are you ready to strike?
Yeah! Hundreds of state workers today rallied at the Capitol and then marched across Wilson Park to the State Executive Building. The union members, many of whom supported Governor Neil Goldschmidt last year, carried signs criticizing the governor's hardline stance against the union. Free from Neil! Free from Neil! Free from Neil! Free from Neil! 4 blocks away in downtown Salem, negotiators struggled to resolve the major issues of salaries, insurance, and workloads before tonight's midnight strike deadline.
Well, you keep looking at the clock, of course, but I'm not going to let that dictate in terms of what makes good sense in a final package.
I can't say I'm encouraged because we still have a very long way to go. But at least there is now, I think, some very earnest attempts on both sides to see if a settlement can be reached.
You notice the frustration in those interviews. It wasn't long after that negotiators walked out of the room. This afternoon, the state issued a news release calling tomorrow's strike technically illegal because the union failed to serve adequate notice. The union says that's just a sleazy trick designed to frighten state employees because all notices were legal. In any event, the union now, 16,500 workers, does plan to carry out its strike, which will begin officially at 12:01 tomorrow morning.
All right, thank you, Mark. And of course, we'll be following the story and report to you if there are any changes.
Okay, well.
On to other news. 7 hours from now, the state of Oregon will experience its first major strike by state workers. That is, unless negotiators can reach a contract agreement before then.
Senior correspondent Chuck Diamond is covering those talks, both sides of those talks in Salem right now. And Chuck, what has happened? Is there any progress?
Well, actually, there was some minor progress that was reported throughout the course of the day. The bargainers went to the table at 10 o'clock this morning, but at 4:15 this afternoon, all of that ended. The union informed the state that there simply was not enough money involved in the offer that the state was making, and they broke off the talks. They have ended, and that means that at 12 midnight tonight, there will be a strike. It is the language of conflict, spoken this noon hour by state workers, members of the Oregon Public Employees Union, as they marched on the state executive building.
Strike the state! Strike the state! Strike the state!
OPEU represents some 17,000 state workers. The union is only hours away from a midnight strike deadline. This is what 6 months of negotiations between the union and the Goldschmidt administration has produced, the brink of a strike. Bargainers went back to the table yesterday and talked until 2 o'clock this morning, going back and forth on a great many issues that were still before them. As we said, they went back to the table again at 10 o'clock this morning. At 4:15 this afternoon, those talks broke off. With us live now is the executive director of the Oregon Public Employees Union, Alice Dale. Alice, as we just reported, you left the table at 4:15 this afternoon. Why?
We left because there was no further ability on the part of either the state or the union, apparently, to make any movement. And it was the conclusion of the mediators that we had concluded any progress we could make today.
How far away are you, based on what you heard from that side and where you were, how far away are you from a settlement?
We're a long way from a settlement. I guess that's the most discouraging part of this. We, after a number of days of very intense negotiations, have attempted to reach a settlement. The state continues to sit with a wage proposal of 3%. In January of each year, we have 4.5% on the table effective July of each year. We still do not have a resolution on fully paid health insurance. We still have a layoff proposal where the state wants to be able to arbitrarily exempt certain employees from layoff procedures. And we still have a major issue of workload and the providing of quality services to the public, and at the same time, humane working conditions for employees that we have no resolution to.
Do you expect that we are looking at a lengthy strike?
There is no way to predict the length of any strike. We certainly are quite committed to a position that we think is fair, that will deliver a good contract and a fair contract to state employees. And we will stay on strike until we feel we have a good settlement.
In terms of the strategy that you're going to employ in this strike with workers leaving their jobs, can you tell us anything about the impact this is going to have either on folks who are in state institutions or the general public trying to seek state services?
Well, there's no question in our representing 17,000 state employees in 45 different state agencies, some of which require substantial amounts of attention for the services to be provided adequately, that is going to have a dramatic impact on state services. Some areas, of course, will be much worse than others. The impact will be seen beginning at midnight tonight. Depends how long the strike continues and depends on how much the public needs certain services that will be affected.
Okay, thank you very much, Alice Dale, Executive Director of the Oregon Public Employees Union. Joining us now is Dave Fiscum, who works for the state of Oregon and has been the spokesperson throughout all of the talks and the negotiations on the potential strike. It's here. We're going to have a strike, Dave. What is the state doing in order to try to see that folks get basic services?
We've been preparing for a strike now for weeks. The union has been threatening a strike for weeks, and so the state has had no choice but to be prepared. We have asked all state agencies to go through an assessment of what's essential and what can be left undone for a time of strike. And we are going to maintain essential services. We have a large cadre of managers. We have people who are not in unions. We have other people who will choose to work rather than strike, who will be on the job tomorrow to maintain those essential services.
Basically, let me ask you to kind of quickly give me a response to the point that the union made, that you folks simply weren't offering enough money, that they have over the years gone without adequate pay raises, and the state, for the first time this year, had a little money, but just simply wasn't offering it. Why not?
Well, first of all, I think money is the issue. I think this issue boils down to money. We could not put up enough money to satisfy this union, and so I think that's where these talks fell apart today. I think my response is that Oregon's economy is recovering. Oregon's economy has not recovered, and the union would claim that we have recovered, and thus there is a lot of surplus money laying around, and we have said no. There are limits to how much. We have made some movement in these last weeks, but not enough, obviously, to avert what looks like a strike tonight.
Okay. Thank you very much. That was Dave Fiscum, the spokesperson for the state of Oregon. As we said, talks broke off at 4:15 this afternoon. At this point, there are no new talks scheduled. We're going to see a strike start at 12 midnight tonight.
Chuck, there was some hope that Governor Goldsmith would make an appearance at the last minute and prevent the strike. Did he appear at all at the talks?
No, he did not. Of course, throughout the whole process, the governor was kept abreast of what was going on and briefed, and in fact, took an active role in determining what it was the state was going to be offering at the table. He did not make any sort of appearance here. He has in the past said he has a belief in basically in the bargaining, the collective bargaining situation, and people should just let it work itself out.
Okay, thank you. Chuck Diamond reporting from Salem, where state workers are set to go out on strike tonight.
So prepare for long lines at the Motor Vehicles Department tomorrow, unless they can find a lot of clerks.
A midnight strike by 16,000 state workers is almost a certainty tonight.
Less than an hour ago, talks between the state and the employees broke off. Casey Cowan is standing by live at negotiations headquarters in Salem with the latest. Casey, what happened?
Well, Tracy and Pete, behind me is the door behind which the state and the union were meeting. I say were because at exactly 4:15, the Oregon Public Employees Union representatives walked away from the bargaining table saying there just wasn't enough money on the table. The state is not flexible on the salaries, so the union said they had no choice but to walk away. Now, the walkout ended any hopes that existed this morning that there might be a settlement before tonight's strike deadline.
I guess I haven't had enough sleep to wake up.
None of the people involved in the negotiations between the state and the Oregon Public Employees Union got much sleep Monday night. Talks went on until 2 in the morning before both sides went home with little to show for their efforts. Arriving for the next session at 10 a.m., neither side was terribly optimistic that a settlement could be reached. The union is prepared to walk out. Last night at strike headquarters, volunteers were calling union members to make sure everyone knows what's going on.
We need members to picket their own work sites at times they would usually be at work.
The state says it is ready as well, although it has never had to actually deal with nearly 17,000 workers going out on strike.
All agencies have updated their strike plans, have gone through decisions about what's essential and what's not, have gone through scenarios about what they would do if a certain number of employees was on strike and a certain number was not on strike. So we're as ready as we'll ever be. We're not hoping that we have to test those plans, however.
The union says it is still far from an agreement with the state, and that it is the state that must make the move towards a settlement. The union has gone as far as it can.
We believe our proposals are very reasonable. We believe that we have made significant movement throughout the negotiations, and movement, frankly, that has not been in any respect equaled by the state. And there is very, very little movement left that we can make.
As if to bring home the point that union members are ready to strike, OPEU held a rally outside the Capitol.
What are we doing? We're going to strike! Right. Who are we going to strike? We're going to strike the state! It's the time to do it. Strike the state! Strike the state! Strike the state!
Then the group marched into the executive building where members chanted union slogans for 5 minutes.
Hey, Neil, take a hit! We want more than 2%! Hey, Neil, take a hit! We want more than 2%! Hey, Neil, take a hit! We want more than 2%!
Now, nearly every agency in the state will be affected in one way or another by this strike if the state workers do indeed strike. But the 3 biggest divisions are the ones that you'll notice first: Adult and Family Services, the Employment Division, and Transportation. Walden Kirsch has the rundown.
The Motor Vehicles Division will be steering a difficult course in the event of a strike. The State Transportation Department will be the largest hit agency in the state. Expect longer waits at the DMV as managers take over, scattered office closures, and if you just turned 16 and are looking forward to getting your license...
Happy birthday.
Best wishes, and that's it, though. The DMV will not be offering driver's tests if OPEU members walk off the job. At the Adult and Family Services Division, there will be service cutbacks, and 3 metropolitan area offices will be shut entirely. AFS offices in Northeast, North, and Southeast Portland will close if there is a strike.
Yeah, I think that it's really a shame that something like that would have to happen, because there's a lot of people out there who really need the assistance.
We hope that we can maintain a sense of calm for our clients and run business as best we can. I think the most important message I'd like to give out to people is that it will not be business as usual.
Officials are saying they will take on no new assistance cases except dire emergencies. Still, the agency that last month doled out $38 million is promising tonight that welfare checks will be out on time. The State Employment Division is not making that promise, however. The 54,000 Oregonians who depend on the division for unemployment checks may see their money delayed.
Maybe a day or two, and we'd ask the public to be patient with us. We will get them out just as promptly as we can.
I don't think it's anything that anybody's looking forward to. You know, public management employees, you know, it's a difficult time.
Statewide public workers' strikes are not common in America. There have only been 4 in the last decade. If the Oregon strike does go ahead, it will be the largest in the nation in half a dozen years. I'm Walden Kirsch, News 8.
And with me now is Alice Dale, the executive director of OPEU. You'd like to correct something. The state told us that you had walked away from the table, and you say that's not right.
No, that's not true at all. We have been in intense negotiations over the last several days in an effort to reach a settlement. We've been meeting with the mediators. There's been essentially shuttle diplomacy between the 2 bargaining teams. The mediators concluded that it was clear we could not reach any agreement and that we couldn't make any more movement today either. And so the parties met at the request of the mediators, and at the request of the mediators, we are now on our own.
Now, there are some flyers going around saying that if indeed there is a strike, be an illegal strike. Can you respond to that?
Yes, I can. I think it's very important that the public and certainly our employees understand that the state is doing all sorts of desperate measures to impair the strike. They want to, but they're throwing out all sorts of assertions of illegality in an effort to discourage employees from taking self-help measures